Hierdie podsending bevat gekruide taal. This podcast contains strong language.
Jou ma se
Welkom by nog 'n episode van Wadde Vloekwoord, 'n podsending oor vloek, skel en ander taboes. Hierdie reeks word moontlik gemaak met die finansiële en tegniese ondersteuning van die Suid-Afrikaanse Akademie vir Wetenskap en Kuns, Bluetech Computers en watkyk.jy.co.za. Ek is Gerhard van Huyssteen en in hierdie episode gesels ek met een van die bekendste Suid-Afrikaanse musiekikone. Sy is al langer as 35 jaar in die Suid-Afrikaanse musiekbedryf, want as voorgraadse student het sy toen ter jare al Mango Groove se hoofsanger geword. Sy is die kenmerkende stem van Dance Some More, Special Star en Moments Away en die gesig van ons Nasionale Lied by groot internasionale byeenkomste. Sy is Claire Johnston. Hallo Claire.
Hallo Gerhard, baie dankie. Dit was baie mooi. I'm blushing. I love the introduction.
Ek moet jou sê, tydens die voorbereiding van hierdie episode was ek eintlik 'n paar keer na aan trane. Want ek was in 1989 'n groen eerstejaartjie op Universiteit en dit was presies die jaar toe Mango Groove se eerste album bekend gestel is, né? Mango Groove.
Ja, dis reg.
So vir my is jou stem in julle musiek nie net sinoniem met my studentejare in konserte op Tux se Joelplaas nie, maar dis veral ook sinoniem met my eie en ons hele land se politieke verandering, nee, dit was interessante tye daai gewees. Maar daaroor praat ons later in hierdie aflewering. Kom ons breek die ys en ons val weg met die taboewaardes vir ons eerste paar woorde. So, dit gaan hier oor hoe taboe of sosiaal onaanvaarbaar jy dink die volgende woorde is vir ander mense. Okay, nie hoe taboe dit vir jou is nie, hoe taboe is dit vir ander mense. So 1 beteken is glad nie taboe nie, en 'n 9 beteken is baie taboe.
Okay,
is jy gereed? Ek gee vir jou, omdat jy 'n Engelssprekende ook is, 2 woorde, 1 in Afrikaans en 1 in Engels. En dan moet jy hulle teen mekaar opweeg. So die eerste 2 is, as ek sê, I feel so kak, teenoor I feel so shit. Het hulle vir jou verskillende taboewaardes?
Yes, I think cuck has become in South Africa very accepted, even in even in polite conversation. I think you can generally get away with the word cuck. I would give cuck probably a 1 or a 2. And then shit, I think, carries more weight somehow. I'm not quite sure why, but I'd rate shit at about a level 7.
A level 7?
For other people.
For other people,
no,
yes, for other people.
No, you know what? Can I revise my opinion? Can I give it a 5? I'm going to give shit a 5.
All right. So in the middle of tabooness, it can sort of...
Depending on who you're with. You know, some people are very, frightened of any kind of swearing, and other people are just very chilled. So I'd give it a 5, yes.
Okay. Volgende ene. Don't be a doers versus don't be a twat.
I think they're both pretty gentle. Possibly in this instance, the doers, the Afrikaans version, might carry more weight. I don't know quite why, but I'd rate them kind of somewhere around a 4. Both of them are 4, actually.
Het die woord twat nog enige seksuele konnotasie in Suid-Afrikaanse Engels? Dat dit verwys na vroulike geslagsdele of so, of is dit maar net eintlik vir 'n mens?
I actually think it's moved on from that. I think it's been used so often in the context of, basically for me, and I think for the people I know, it sort of means don't be an idiot. It's kind of up there with arsehole. In fact, it's possibly even gentler than arsehole.
Ja, ek sou ook nogal vir my eie gevoel dink ek ook, dis nogal sagter as arsehole.
Yes, it is. It's a bit of a silly word, whereas doers has doers is still kind of light, I think, but it's got more weight, it's got more heft to it, whereas twat is it's like twat sounds like twit to me.
Ja, presies. En Twitter, ons almal is op Twitter,
ja,
nee.
Indeed, exactly.
Presies. Claire, So jy is so Suid-Afrikaans soos koffiehuis in Cremora. So ek was verskriklik verbaas om uit te vind jy is eintlik in Engeland gebore.
I know.
So waarom het jy en jou familie na Suid-Afrika verhuis?
Well, we came here when I was about 3 years old in the early 70s. My father had set up a company here and he was going to try and make it work. And basically everything fell apart and he became quite a scary person. He used to drink too much and he used to become quite destructive. Anyway, he and my mum divorced when I was about 8. He went back to the UK and my mum and I stayed on. And I often think how different my life would have been if we'd gone back to England as was planned. If things had gone well, we were going to, probably eventually go back to England as a family. So I'm obviously quite grateful that, in many ways, quite grateful that things with my parents didn't work out, which sounds a terrible thing to say, but I think you get my meaning.
Ja, en so julle sou aanvanklik net tydelik hierheen gekom het. Dit was nie 'n permanente skuif nie.
That's right. It was meant to be a temporary maneuver, and then everything kind of didn't work out. And oddly enough, my father is back in the UK. I haven't seen him in many years, but yeah, he's there and I'm here.
En jou ma?
My mum passed away 8 years ago, sadly.
Jammer om dit te hoor. So Claire, jy het nou hoofsaaklik dus saam met jou ma groot geword.
Yes.
Ek bedoel jou pa, jy sê jou pa toe jy 8 jaar oud was, is jou pa terug Engeland toe, né?
Hy was back. Ja, absolutely. He was very much absent.
Goed. Het jy dan in hierdie het jy ander broers en susters en so aan?
No, as I'm an only lonely child, I always wanted brothers and sisters and had these wonderful fantasies about this sort of what a big family would be like. And of course, all my friends who have big families say to me, "Oh, don't be ridiculous. Lucky you had it easy." So, you always want what you don't have.
Natuurlijk.
Ja,
So dis nou jy en jou ma eintlik. Het jy dus in 'n huis of 'n omgewing groot geword waar daar gevloek is?
I didn't grow up in a house of swearing at all. My mum had I would almost call it a pathological revulsion for swearing of any kind. And when I was 8, just after my parents split up, my mum met a very lovely man called Don. And he also, because of my mum, he didn't swear. So I didn't grow up with any kind of swearing. I do have one swear story to tell you from my childhood, from when I was in England.
Yeah.
And it's actually quite a silly story. We were in England in the grocery store, and I think my father was with us as well. And we were standing at the queue, and I was pointing at sweets, and I'm about 3 years old, and I'm pointing at the sweets going, "I want sweeties, I want sweeties." And my mum is saying to me, "Claire, no, you've had enough sweeties for today." And apparently I stamped my foot repeatedly and shouted, "Bugger, bugger, bugger, bugger." And there was an old lady and my mother was absolutely horrified. And there was an old lady who said, "Little girl, where did you learn that language?" I pointed at my father and said, "My daddy." And so that is, that's the first time I ever swore, and possibly the last time I ever swore, certainly in front of my mother. Anyway.
Oh, that's very funny. Bugger, bugger, bugger.
Bugger, bugger, bugger.
Is dit 'n woord wat jy vandag nog sal gebruik? Bugger.
I do.
Well.
And I think of it as quite a light word. I mean, I think of it, again, it sounds silly. Just the sound of it sounds amusing. It doesn't sound hurtful.
Ja, absoluut. En waar dink jy aan want jy was nog jonk, né? Ek bedoel jy was nog 'n
Yes.
dogtertjie van 3 jaar. Waar dink jy aan die woord gekom?
Definitely my father. Now but I have no memory of him swearing more than that, even when he was at his most angry. I don't have a memory of the F words flying around. But bugger obviously stuck from a young age. And as you say, still has. Still used.
Presies. Claire, so jy word in 'n huis groot waar daar nie eintlik gevloek word nie, waar jou ma selfs teen vloek is en so aan. Wanneer dink jy het jy vir die eerste keer bewus geword van vloek, want jy is toe nou na skole toe hier in Suid-Afrika, en dit moet dan seker nou in skole wees, né?
Absolutely. No, you're quite right. There was probably some peripheral swearing happening around me in primary school, but I don't particularly remember it. But I do remember the word shit being used a lot in high school. And I remember the first time I used the word shit, and I was about 15, I think. I remember it quite clearly. And I used it to try and be cool. I used it in front of a bunch of guys who used the word shit around me all the time, and so I used the word, and I felt quite liberated actually, and but also very naughty. I was being really naughty, and that was a kind of thrilling, really.
En belangrik dat jy weet daar so groot funksie van vloekwoorde is gaan oor identifisering. En dis eintlik pragtig wat jy nou sê dat dit juis 'n meganisme vir jou was om jou solidariteit met ander te wys.
It was definitely that, and also fitting in, being cool, a lot of that sort of thing, and probably part of the process of growing up and of separating myself from my mum, I guess.
Natuurlijk, nee, leaving the nest.
Leaving the nest. One swear word at a time.
One swear word at a time. Oh, that's a lovely motto for the show.
There we go.
Claire, so ons praat nou 'n bietjie oor die funksies van vloekwoorde. En jy het net nou toe het jy gesê dis amper vir jou kak is amper vir jou makliker as shit. Dit vir jou 'n laer taboewaarde as shit.
Yes.
In Engelse kringe, in jou vriendekring, dis nou nie in professionele kringe nie, in jou vriendekring, dink jy mense vloek makliker in Afrikaans as in Engels?
That's a good question. I think that might be the case. But again, depending on the word. There are some words, there's a word in English and a word in Afrikaans that are both, I think, completely unusable. In polite company or even with your friends, you have to be very careful about using it. And it begins with a C in English and a K in Afrikaans. And they sound slightly similar, and they're both names for female body parts, and they're both, I think that's a tricky word. But back to I've deviated from your question. I think maybe you're right. I think maybe it is easier. I don't quite know what it is. I think what I like about swearing in Afrikaans is you can really hurl yourself into the word, like kak and doos, and it's so expressive, and somehow, I don't know, it somehow doesn't feel as offensive, but maybe that's my upbringing speaking.
En ook miskien dat dit nie so seer maak nie, nê, omdat dit in 'n ander taal is.
That's right.
Jy weet, is dit nie so hurtful nie.
That's probably a perfect explanation. Exactly. If I'd said kak in front of my mum, she probably wouldn't have minded as much as if I'd said shit.
Ja.
If I think about it. Yeah, there's something to that.
En ek dink altyd in Afrikaans, byvoorbeeld, dis soveel moeiliker om te sê, o my God, maar om te sê, oh my God, nee, dis baie makliker eintlik om dit in 'n ander taal te kan sê. Net so die omgekeerde in Afrikaans ook, nee, dis makliker om te sê, ag, ek het 'n shitdag, as om te sê ek het 'n kakdag, nee.
I see, yes, okay, that's brilliant. That does actually make a lot of sense. And I think a lot of the time with swear words is when you use a swear word, it's often the intention behind it that comes through. And if you're using it lightly, it doesn't have a sting, but if you're using it in an angry way, then it's hurtful. And I think that's what my mum objected to with swearing. I think she sort of misread swearing. I think she thought that the moment the swear word was there, it meant there was anger in the room. And that I don't think is necessarily the case at all.
Natuurlijk. Ek bedoel mense assosieer hierdie sterk negatiewe energie met vloekwoorde, né?
Yes, exactly.
Voor ons advertensiebreek vat, hier kom weer vir jou 3 woorde wat jy vir ons moet op 'n skaal plaas. Nou al 3 van hulle, Claire, ons het nou net daaroor gepraat, al 3 van hulle kom uit die Oxfordse wat saamgestel is saam met Oxford, die Dictionary of South African English.
Okay.
So dis al 3 Afrikaanse vloekwoorde wat opgeneem is in Engels.
Right.
In die woordeboek staan in die Dictionary of South African English. So, hier's die 3 vir jou. En ek gaan vir jou by elkeen voorbeelde gee wat ek gevat het uit die Dictionary of South African English. Die eerste een is moer as a verb. En die sin is, these 2 guys walked into the Harbour Cafe in Yeovil and just started mooring everyone. En dit kom uit 1990 uit.
Okay.
So wat sou jy sê is die taboewaarde van moer as 'n werkwoord?
I'd give it a 3.
Okay. So
I'll give it a 3.
dis iets is 3 vir jou iets wat jy al voor jou ma sou sê of nog nie?
Yes, I would actually. Partly because my mom probably wouldn't have known what moer meant. That helped.
Dit help altyd, dit help verskriklik baie.
Exactly. And she didn't keep the dictionary, the South African Oxford Dictionary, close by. But I think generally for people, I think moer is, again, context dependent.
Natuurlijk.
To some extent. Yes.
Dan teenoor hom, donder.
Donder. Yeah, I love that.
The gangsters were urged on by ducktail girls, shouting, "Smash them, donder them." And this comes from 1963 already.
I was going to say, when I heard DuckTales, I was thinking,
Exactly.
this is way back. I would give that a 1.
So nog sagter as moer.
Yeah, for me, definitely. Because for me, moer also has a suggestion potentially of something more damaging. Donder again sounds light.
Okay.
Ek sal jou donder. It sounds, I may be wrong, you see. I'm speaking as an English-speaking South African.
Daar's nie regte en verkeerde antwoorde hier nie. Wat baie interessant is en wat eintlik op 'n manier 'n bietjie jou gevoel ondersteun, in Afrikaans spel ons dit D-O-N-D-E-R, donder.
Donder.
Maar in die Dictionary of South African English is dit opgeneem as donder. So reeds sagter, daai harde d, die tweede d is al weg. So
that's true. You're right. That the proper spelling with the D does give it that extra emphasis and extra power. No question about it.
Laaste ene. En hierdie die aanhaling kom uit Ethel Fugard se Boesman en Lena, dis 1969. Okay. That ticky deposit hard of his is tight, like his poopel and his fist.
Now, you see, football is, I remember a teacher, my Afrikaans teacher, Mevrou Kotze. I remember her using the word poepel about one of us, maybe even about me. So for me, that's like that's definitely a 1 maximum.
Okay, so
but again, I know it depends. Some people would take huge offense to it. And again, maybe it's okay now, whereas maybe in 1969 it had a lot more.
Was dit 'n bietjie meer krag gehad, nee?
Yeah, that's right. I don't know.
Nou, net voor ons nou vir die advertensiebreek gaan, Claire, daar is 'n voeltjie wat in my ore gefluit het, dat jy 'n party trick het.
O genade, ek dink ek weet wat dit is.
Wat is die party trick?
Is it about saying words backwards?
Presies.
Oh no. What it requires you to be able to spell the word. So you need to visualize. It's a visualization game more than anything else.
Jy het nou kans gehad om 3 woorde te visualize.
So, yes.
So nou soek ons vir hulle agteruit. So die eerste een, kom ons begin by moer.
Moer, reom.
Donder.
Rednod.
En
poepel. Leopel. Now that sounds utterly inoffensive.
Presies. Dit sou dalk 'n manier gewees het hoe jy by jou ma kon wegkom met vloekwoorde.
Exactly.
Moenie weggaan nie, ons is net hierna terug.
Ek is Claire Johnston en jy luister na Wat die vloekwoord.
Kom ons kom 'n bietjie by die groter tema nou uit van politieke taboes en sensuur in Suid-Afrikaanse musiek. Nou, ek het baie van julle konserte bygewoon, maar die een wat my tot vandag toe bybly, was die inhuldiging van president Nelson Mandela by die Uniegebou in 1994. Ek is seker dit moet vir jou ook een van jou hoogtepunte gewees het.
Definitely. You're absolutely right. It was one of those moments where it was more than music. It was everything coming together, from the flag to the flyover to the feelings of positivity and change and connection. I think all South Africans felt connected for the first time. That event sort of crystallized it, really. And it was amazing for us to perform live and to see Madiba and to be part of something. And the audience was massive, and it was satellite linked around the world. And we were just on this massive high because it was huge. It was absolutely huge. And you're absolutely right. It was one of my highlights. One of the ones that'll stay in my head forever till I die.
Dink ook vir my gewoon een van die dae. Ek sal daar onder die bome daar by die Uniegebou nooit in my lewe vergeet nie. Nou, Mango Groove was sentraal, ten minste vir my in my kop, en ek weet ek is nie die enigste een wat so dink nie, sentraal deel van hierdie tydperk van politieke verandering in Suid-Afrika. Daai belangrike 5 jaar van 1989-90 af tot en met 94. Mango Groove was sentraal daar.
Thank you.
En nou wil ek weet, watter tipe teenstand het julle ervaar in daai tydperk?
Well, just to go back all the way to 1984, which is when the band was formed. I only joined in 1985. And you're absolutely right, there were huge difficulties. Black and white South Africans, lest we forget, weren't allowed to associate, weren't allowed to really do anything with one another in any kind of way other than, the sort of working sort of relationship in the house or in the farm. And so music was, black and white South Africans working together in a musical context was very much frowned upon. And one really incredible story from those days was John, the founding member of the band, used to drop, I think he was dropping Jack Laroli back in Soweto after a gig, and it was after 9 o'clock. John, all of 19 years old, was basically arrested by the police on a pass offence. He basically was, contravening pass laws and spent the night in jail. And that's the sort of thing that was happening frequently mostly to black South Africans who were, in the wrong part of town past a certain time. And that was the reality that people were living with.
En dit was nie net hier oor 'n tydperk met 'n state of emergency en so aan nie. Dit was gewoon die Suid-Afrikaanse wette, dalk vir van die jonger luisteraars. Jy mag dit dalk nie weet nie, maar in daai tyd kon mense nie byvoorbeeld saam bly nie. Mense van verskillende bevolkingsgroepe mag nie met mekaar getrou het nie.
Right.
Kon julle Claire ooit, as julle op toer gaan, wat het julle gedoen om hierby verby te kom? Moes verskillende mense in die groep in ander dele van die dorp gaan bly, of hoe dit gewerk?
It's such a good question. I remember the first time I traveled with the band. It was probably in 1986. We went down to Cape Town for December to do a whole lot of shows down in Cape Town. And this was before we had the other girls in the band. I was the only girl, and we all piled into a combi. And off we would go, and we'd drive it in one day. And I remember we stayed in places like Woodstock, where you could sort of get away with it. It wasn't legal, but you could get away with staying in places like that somehow. Looking back, I wish I'd asked more questions about how it was legal, but we sort of got away with it. But amazing times, traveling across the country. And for your younger listeners, this was before the days of the fancy petrol stations where you could stop and get absolutely everything you wanted, use nice bathroom facilities. Everything was it was very different then. It's a very different South Africa. And but I have such fond memories. And that's another place I learned about swearing was with the band, because I was with a bunch of guys. I was the only girl, and my goodness, language was colorful.
Het julle hoofsaaklik Engels gepraat in die groep?
I'm ashamed to say yes, because everyone else, Mango at that point, I can't even remember, what the ratio was of black and white South Africans. We were all just doing what we did together. We didn't even think about that. But English was the one that made the most sense, because all the black members of the band were completely fluent.
Yeah.
And I remember going back to all the way to primary school. For 1 year, we were taught Northern Sotho, and then they stopped teaching Northern Sotho. And it was such a sadness looking back that didn't carry on, because it would have really made a difference. I'm sure there are lots of wonderful Northern Sotho swear words.
Moet wees, nee. En jy praat wel vlot Afrikaans. Het jy dit ook by die skool binne gekry?
Ja, by die skool. My Afrikaans is baie vrot, actually, nie baie vlot nie. The point, I think if I were to go and live with someone for 3 weeks and just speak Afrikaans, I would probably come away quite fluent. And I think that's maybe something I should look at doing.
En dit kom uit die skool uit daai...
Absolutely. Yeah, that came from school. Very good Afrikaans teachers at school, actually.
Yeah.
And I loved reading Afrikaans literature.
Ja. Nou, terug na daai beginjare toe, was Mango Groove ooit formeel gesensureer, dat die radio julle nie kon uitsaai nie, of dat die TV nie video's wou wys nie, of so?
Yes, absolutely. I remember the one particular incident was with the music video for Special Star, which, as you rightly say, was released in 1989, when things were starting to change. The winds of change were blowing through the country, and there was a sense of positive energy, actually. But the SABC still were very particular about what they would allow, and what Special Star had in the very beginning of the video, it had South African Communist Party flags.
Yeah.
Because it was set at a rally. It was shots of a rally and just different flags at a protest. And they said, unless you edit this out, we're not going to broadcast it. So I can't even remember what actually happened, because I know it got played. I think in the beginning they cut the flags out, and then I think they put them back at some point.
Want ek kan die video wel baie goed onthou, maar ek kan byvoorbeeld nie die vla onthou nie. So dit moet waarskynlik dus uitgesny gewees het.
Maybe. I wish I was clearer on what actually did happen. I just know that was an issue.
En kan jy onthou of julle ooit verban is byvoorbeeld om iewers op te tree, dat iemand jy wou hê julle moet in Klerksdorp kom sing, en toe mag julle nie in Klerksdorp gaan sing nie, of so iets?
We did have issues where there would be people who would be upset about us being there, but we weren't ever stopped from performing in places, for instance, like Klerksdorp, absolutely. We did have issues where I remember we broke down. We were traveling again, I think, to Cape Town. We broke down and we tried to go to a particular restaurant to wait for help, and they wouldn't let the black members of the band in, so of course we all just left.
Yeah.
And that, for me, as a white South African, because this was the early days of Mango, where I started to actually really see the reality of our situation, of South Africa's political reality, legislated reality,
En dis vir my interessant. So jy was in Johannesburg op hoërskool, nee?
Yes, that's right.
En ek bedoel, ek gaan nou veronderstel, dit was dan nou 'n gewone wit skool gewees in daai dae.
Transvaal Education Department.
Presies. En toe jy gaan studeer by die Universiteit van Witwatersrand, het jy daar toe eintlik vir die eerste keer regtig in noue kontak gekom met ander swart Suid-Afrikaners?
It was with Mango that I really started to make friends with black South Africans, because prior to that, as you say, being at school where it was a white school, I joined Mango in my final year of school, and that is when I met someone like Mickey Vilakazi. He was 64 and who'd performed in the entertainment corps in World War II, and so I was just unbelievably excited to be with someone who, he was a proper jazz musician. He had this proper pedigree. So I was in awe of him.
Yeah.
And in fact, everyone was older than me. I was the baby, so I was just complete awe of everybody. And couldn't believe that I was playing in a band with really, really good musicians.
Ja. En jy het hulle ook nie geken voor dit nie. Jy het nou maar geleer wat so fantastiese musikant hulle was terwyl jy in Mango Groove was.
That's right, absolutely, and realized I was actually with, because I grew up listening to people like Louis Armstrong and Ella Fitzgerald, and proper jazz, and now I was in a band with people who were proper. It was intimidating.
Ja, ek kan dink. Iewers in 'n onderhoud het jy gesê dat behalwe Another Country was julle musiek nie eintlik, en ek dink jy die woorde gebruik, overtly political.
Yes, exactly.
Maar tog was julle polities deel van hierdie veranderende omstandighede.
Exactly. I think what was political about Mango and the statement that Mango was making was that black and white South Africans were on a stage together, having fun together, making music together, making people happy. That was the statement, looking back. And it was a powerful statement because it affected people. You can often affect people and make changes by being subtle. You don't have to break the door down. You know, you can actually, I don't know, you just have fun, and that's powerful.
En eintlik wat in hierdie potsending wat nou gaan oor onder andere vloekwoorde en waar daar dus 'n sterk klem is op taal, eintlik deur nie taal te gebruik nie, maak jy eintlik 'n baie sterk stelling ook. Jy het nie altyd nodig, net soos jy sê, jy het nie altyd nodig om uitgesproke om te vloek, om jou politieke boodskap uit te dra nie. Jy kan dit ook op ander maniere doen.
That's right, you know, and I have huge respect for people who are more kind of overt. I
Natuurlijk.
I have a big fan of all sorts of styles of music, but Mango was quite, Mango was subtle, and it's, to this day I still see it with. When we come on stage, we just have so much fun, and it's kind of infectious. We have fun with each other, and then the audience bounces off that, and then we feed it off the audience, and it becomes this lovely, lovely, crazy, fun thing. But you're right, Another Country was quite politically loaded song, written in response to the Boipatong massacre. John saw the news footage and was just totally distressed by what he saw, and wrote these incredible and powerful lyrics. So that's a song I still love singing. It's still very poignant, it's written so well, and it's a beautiful song to sing.
En al was dit 'n liedjie van daai tyd, dit het tog nog relevantie vandag, nie waar nie? Ek bedoel, dit is tog nog iets wat jy vandag op 'n verhoog kan sing.
I completely agree with you. I think, it's a sort of song that I think will always be relevant, because there's always going to be complications and sadnesses and injustice, social injustice, and a song like that is just, I think, permanently relevant.
En juis in die subtiliteit daarvan maak dit amper dan universeel, nee, dit maak dat dit nie.
Yes.
It doesn't date.
Exactly. It doesn't date, and when you say, and you're right, it's universal in that it's a song that, as much as it was written in a South African context, I think it's relevant the world over. It's one of those songs that has and I can say I can talk so I can praise it so mightily because I did not write it. I'm lucky enough to be the one singing it, but I just think it's a very powerful song.
Ja. En die een ander ene is We Are Waiting.
Yes.
Wat geskryf is in afwagting op Nelson Mandela se vrylating, en wat uiteindelik gebruik is as deel van 'n internasionale persgeleentheid toe Mandela vrygelaat is. Is dit iets wat jy vandag nog kan sing, of is We Are Waiting dan wel iets wat by daai tyd hoort?
It's a good question. It's one we don't perform live, but I think it's something we should maybe revisit, because I think it is still relevant. It's I think we're all always waiting for things to get better. We could sing it now in the time of COVID, as in we're waiting for this to end. We're waiting for the vaccine. I'm being flippant now. But it was obviously written at a time when we were waiting for change. And,
Maar dit was vir my ook opvallend, want ek het die woorde gaan lees, nou gaan soek, en daar's weer eens niks eksplisiet polities daarin wat verwys na daai tyd nie. En daarom bly dit amper universeel dat ons vandag nog steeds kan wag, soos jy sê, op verandering van watter aard ook al.
Yes, thank you. I think that's true. I think it can be, read. People can read into it what they want, and I think that's sometimes the power of music is to let people go on their own journey with a song. let it mean something to them, and hopefully it helps them. I know a song like Moments Away, so many people have come up to me after shows and said it's a song that got them through a very difficult time when a loved one was passing away, and it's also, at the same time, the song can also be considered romantic. So it's whatever someone sees leads into a song, and whatever makes it special for them, I think is wonderful.
Terwyl jy van Moments Away praat, dit gaan my nou eintlik bring by die volgende afdeling waaroor ek bietjie wil gesels. Jy het 'n pragtige weergawe van Moments Away saam met Karen Suid gesing.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank
Maar
you.
Karen is nou lank nie die enigste Afrikaanse musikant saam met wie jy al opgetree het nie.
That's very true. I've been lucky enough to work with amazing people, including Gerhard.
Want die pragtige video waar jy en Kurt Paul Simon se Under African Skies sing, as jy by die huis dit nog nie geluister het nie, stop sommer nou hierdie potsending en gaan luister dadelik daarna, gaan kyk dit eintlik, want dit is ook 'n pragtige musiekvideo wat op YouTube is. So dit was Kurt Darren. En dan moet 'n ander groot pop-ikoon, en ek moet nou sê, dit is een van my Afrikaanse gunstelinge, en dit is saam met Juanita Du Plessis.
She's also incredible.
Op julle laaste album het julle saam Kinders van die Wind gesing, nê? Wat natuurlik een van Afrikaanse bekendste liedjies is. Nou, Claire, jy het saamgewerk saam met van die grootste name in die Afrikaanse musiekwêreld. Is daar vir jou, vanuit jou perspektief uit, is daar vir jou verskil in hoe jy dink taboes en vloekwoorde in die Afrikaanse musiekwêreld hantering gesien word, teenoor hoe dit in die Suid-Afrikaanse Engelse musiekwêreld gesien word en hanteer word?
I almost can't answer. All I do know is, I've been lucky enough, as you say, to work with amazing artists and to be at a lot of festivals, a lot of huge Afrikaans festivals, and it's always so exciting and thrilling. And I've just found that everyone, generally, the music industry is quite a sweary industry. Both English and Afrikaans people express themselves, and often they'll express themselves using a vloekwoord.
Yeah.
So I would say it's kind of even. Again, I suppose it depends on which market you're looking at. If you're looking at a more conservative market, maybe people are more careful. But, I don't know. I've heard some very colourful language coming out of very unexpected mouths.
Ja. En dis veral ook behind the scenes. Sê jy kan nie daar vir jou verskil sien tussen byvoorbeeld die Afrikaanse omgewing en Engelse omgewings waar daar minder of meer gevloek word by die ene.
No, I would say it's kind of, it depends on the individuals.
Ja.
Let's put it that way.
En natuurlik gewoon deel van die bedryf, nê. Ek bedoel, dis kameras, ligte, aksie, ons moet gaan, jy weet, daar's nie tyd vir baie mooi praatjies en so aan nie, so mens hoor dikwels maar kleurvolle taal.
Absolutely, and it's never done in anger, it's how things are said.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not what is said, it's how it's said, I think is quite important.
Wanneer jy op die verhoog is, dink ek nie, ek het jou al ooit gehoor of gesien vloek of gedink dat jy ooit sal kan vloek op 'n verhoog nie.
Yes, I've never sworn on stage. So, no, I may have said shit once. I think I said shit once, and I actually gave myself a fright, and I gave the band a fright. They were all like, "What? What's she doing?" Oh no, you just reminded me.
In jou persoonlike lewe, as ek 'n persoonlike vraag mag vra, waar jy saam met vriende is, waar jy saam met jou genoot is, waar jy om 'n braaivleisvuur staan en so aan, is daar vir jou grense aan woorde wat jy dink jy mag sê of nie mag sê nie? Met ander woorde, my vraag gaan 'n bietjie oor selfsensuur.
Yes. I will, in quotes, I will read my audience to some extent. In other words, there are times where I will be aware that, and it's generally if I'm with older people, strangely enough, I will be more careful. And I think that's a lot to do with my mum. I will often assume that an older person won't want swearing in front of them. Some people genuinely really don't like it at all. So I'll read the situation. I'll read the room. And if swearing starts, then I'll think, then it's kind of relaxed. But I'm not a huge swearer. In other words, if I can find a better word, if I can find an interesting word, as opposed to like a vloekwoord, although some vloekwoorden obviously do make the point better than other words, I'll try and use interesting words. But at the same time, sometimes the swear word just does the job. Does the job better than...
Partykeer gebeur dit mos nou maar gewoon, nee.
Yes.
Dis interessant, jy sê spesifiek waarskynlik waar daar ouer mense is. Kom ons vat die teenoorgestelde daarvan, wat van voor kinders? Wat is jou gevoel daaroor?
Oh, definitely. I'm also much more careful in front of children. Definitely I am. And again, I put that down to my upbringing.
Ja.
That's definitely an upbringing thing.
Dat daai beelde eintlik so sterk in jou kop is, nê, van as kind mag ek nie vloek nie, want ek is by 'n ouer persoon. So as ek nou hier as 'n volwasse is, dan moet ek nie voor ouer mense en voor kinders vloek nie.
Yeah, it's almost a con oor respect. It's almost like, wanting to be respectful. And but having said that, I've heard a lot of when I say old, I mean, I'm becoming an older person. I'm no longer 17.
We are all older people.
We're all getting older.
Now.
But, I've heard some incredible language coming out of older people's mouths. So I don't know why I'm so careful. But it's about respecting the individual. So I'll, suss out how the person feels. And then,
Dink dit is met die navorsingsprojek waarmee ek besig is, en waarvan hierdie deel is, dink ek dis een van die goed wat ek oor die afgelope jaar of 2 die sterkste agtergekom het, dat dit vir so baie mense eintlik gaan oor respek. En jy kan vloek solank dit met respek is, nê? Want jou maat gedink dit kom met anger, maar as daar respek is daarmee, dan hoef dit nie so erg te wees nie.
Yes, well, that's my view. I think my mum, if she suddenly popped up next to me now, she would probably say no. She probably would disagree with me. She'd probably say no, swearing's just ugly. I don't know.
I want to end this interview with a quote from the lyrics of Another Country, the song we spoke about earlier.
Yes.
And I quote, "But let's begin to look within, to where the future lies, and find a strength to live beneath another country's skies. Another time, another place, another country, another state of grace. You'll walk beside me, I'll tell you no lies, and then you'll see another country in my eyes." Dearest Claire, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your experiences with us today. But most of all, thank you for all these years where you have helped so many of us to see another country in and through your eyes. So thank you very much.
The thanks are mine. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Dankie dat jy geluister het na nog 'n episode van Wadde Vloekwoord. As jy op hoogte van sake wil bly met alles wat in die vloekwêreld gebeur, soek ons op Facebook, Twitter, Instagram of Pinterest onder Vloek COZA. Sonder punte, sonder spasies, niks nie. Vloek COZA. Ek is Gerhard van Huyssteen en onthou, as jy moet vloek, vloek vrolik, vloek vriendelik en vloek in klein letters.
Gekruide taal.